Hey everyone! Picture this. It's March 3rd, 1999, and the whole world is watching one man die. Not because he was famous, not because he was a celebrity, but because his execution was about to trigger the biggest legal crisis between the United States and Germany since World War II. Walter LaGrand's final 18 minutes in that gas chamber didn't just end a life. They changed international law forever. And the crazy part? It all started with a simple bank robbery that went horribly, horribly wrong. Today, we're delving into a case that has it all: international drama, legal loopholes, and a method of execution so brutal that it was banned forever after this day. Trust me, this story will blow your mind. The crime that started everything. Let's rewind to January 7th, 1982. Two young brothers, Walter and Carl LaGrand, walked into the Valley National Bank in Marana, Arizona, with a plan in mind. Well, a plan. Here's where it gets almost comical. Carl walked in wearing a suit and tie, carrying a briefcase as if he were going to a business meeting. Then, he opened his jacket to reveal a toy gun. Yeah, you heard that right. They were trying to rob a bank with a fake pistol. But what started as amateur hour quickly turned into a nightmare. When bank manager Ken Hartsock couldn't open the vault, panic set in. The brothers tied up Hartsock and employee Don Lopez with electrical tape. Then Walter grabbed a letter opener from the desk and held it to Hartsock's throat. This is where everything went wrong. In a frenzied attack, Ken Hartsock was stabbed 24 times with that letter opener. 24 times. Don Lopez was also stabbed but miraculously survived. The sheer brutality of it showed this wasn't calculated murder. This was pure, uncontrolled rage. The brothers were arrested the same day. Carl, trying to protect his older brother, confessed to the crimes but claimed Walter wasn't in the room during the actual stabbing. However, there's a legal twist that would haunt them. Because the police violated Carl's Miranda rights, the confession was thrown out. The one piece of evidence that might have saved Walter's life was deemed inadmissible. And honestly, if they'd put half as much effort into planning the robbery as they did into Carl's business casual look, maybe they would have realized that toy guns don't exactly strike fear into the hearts of bank managers. Both brothers were convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death, but this was just the beginning of a legal saga that would span nearly 2 decades. The American legal maze. Now, here's where the American justice system demonstrates its complexity. The LaGrand brothers had a secret weapon they didn't even know about. They were German citizens. Born in Germany, they'd lived in the U.S. since childhood, but never became American citizens. Under the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, when foreign nationals are arrested, they must be informed of their right to contact their home country's consulate. Sounds simple, right? Well, Arizona authorities never told them about this, right? For 10 whole years, the German government had no idea 2 of its citizens were on death row in America. The brothers only learned about their consular rights in 1992, a full decade after their arrest. When they finally contacted Germany, it created a legal catch-22. They were unable to raise this issue in their original appeals because they were unaware of it at the time. But now that they knew, American courts said it was too late. They'd missed their chance. This doctrine is called procedural default, and it's basically legal quicksand. You can't argue about a right you were never told you had, but not arguing about it means you can never say anything about it later. It's like being penalized for not knowing the rules of a game nobody told you were playing. The final gambit: choosing death. By the late 1990s, with most legal options exhausted, the LaGrand brothers made a desperate move. Arizona had changed its execution method to lethal injection in 1992, but inmates sentenced before that date could choose between injection and the gas chamber. Their lawyers saw an opportunity. The gas chamber was being challenged as cruel and unusual punishment, torture, essentially. But to make this argument in court, they had to be facing execution by gas. So both brothers chose the gas chamber, not because they wanted to die that way, but because it was their only remaining legal strategy. Think about that for a second. They had to choose What they believed was a torturous death just to have the right to argue it was hellish. The choice became a trap. Carl went first on February 24th, 1999. At the last minute, he accepted the state's offer to switch to lethal injection. But Walter held firm. His lawyers convinced him this was their final shot at stopping the execution. On March 1st, Arizona Governor Jane Hull offered Walter the same deal: switch to lethal injection and die peacefully. On his lawyer's advice, he refused. Hey, if you're finding this case as fascinating and shocking as I am, please give it a like and make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell because we've got more incredible true crime stories coming your way. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next in this international drama. Germany takes action. While Walter's domestic appeals were failing, something unprecedented was happening on the world stage. When Germany finally learned about the LaGrand case, they were furious. Their citizens had been denied basic treaty rights for over a decade. On March 2nd, 1999, just 27 hours before Walter's scheduled execution, Germany did something that had never been done before. They filed an emergency lawsuit against the United States at the International Court of Justice in The Hague. The World Court moved at lightning speed. On March 3rd, just hours before the execution, they issued a legally binding order. The United States must stop the execution immediately. But here's where American federalism became a shield against international law. The U.S. government basically shrugged and said, "We can't control what Arizona does." They sent the court order to Governor Hull with no comment and no request to comply. The Supreme Court, that same day, ruled that Walter had waived his right to challenge the gas chamber by choosing it. The logic was twisted. His strategic choice to assert a constitutional right was treated as if it were a concession of that very right. The agonizing end. That evening, Walter LaGrand was strapped into Arizona's gas chamber. His final words were heartbreaking. "To all my loved ones, I hope they find peace. To all of you here today, I forgive you and hope I can be forgiven in my next life." What happened next was brutal. When sodium cyanide pellets dropped into sulfuric acid beneath his chair, deadly hydrogen cyanide gas rose around him. Witnesses heard him make 3 or 4 loud hacks as he began coughing violently. He gagged and slumped forward, but he didn't die quickly. For 18 agonizing minutes, his body showed signs of life. His back rose and fell with shallow breathing, his head twitched, and his hands clenched and turned red. Even Dawn Lopez, the survivor of his 1982 attack, was among the witnesses and began weeping at the horrific scene. And while prison officials claimed it was like having a heart attack, I'm pretty sure heart attacks don't usually come with a front row audience and take 18 minutes of visible suffering. Just saying. This was the last execution by gas chamber in United States history. The method was so obviously cruel that no state has used it since. The international verdict. Walter was dead, but Germany wasn't finished. They pursued their case at the World Court to the end. On June 27, 2001, the International Court of Justice delivered a verdict that rocked the legal world. The court found that 1. The Vienna Convention creates individual rights, not just diplomatic courtesies between countries, but real enforceable rights for people. 2. Procedural default rules cannot block treaty rights. You can't use legal technicalities to erase international obligations. 3. World court orders are legally binding. When the ICJ says stop, countries must stop. The United States was found to have violated international law on multiple counts. But here's the kicker. There were no real consequences. The federal government said it couldn't control the states. The states said they only followed federal courts, and Walter LaGrand remained dead. The legacy lives on. The LaGrand case created a permanent crack in the relationship between American law and international law. Today, we're seeing new developments that make this case relevant again. Several states are now turning to nitrogen gas execution as their new humane method, since lethal injection drugs are becoming harder to obtain. The constitutional questions Walter LaGrand died trying to raise about what makes an execution method cruel and unusual are being asked all over again. The case also established that consular rights are individual human rights, not just diplomatic niceties. Every time a foreign national is arrested in America today, law enforcement is supposed to inform them of their right to contact their consulate. This happens because of what happened to Walter LaGrand. But the fundamental tension remains. What happens when state law, federal law, and international law all point in different directions? The LaGrand case showed that in America, state sovereignty often wins, even when it means defying the world's highest court. So there you have it, the incredible true story of Walter LaGrand, whose death forever changed international law. From a bungled bank robbery with a toy gun to an 18-minute execution that shocked the world, this case had everything. Here's my question for you. Should states be able to ignore international court orders, or should treaty obligations override state sovereignty? Let me know in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts on these complex legal issues. If you want to dive deeper into death row cases, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Next week, we're exploring more shocking final meals and last words from death row, including one inmate whose final request was so bizarre it made international headlines. And if you're fascinated by legal cases that changed history, check out the video I'll link in the description, which explores other instances where international law and American courts have clashed. Trust me, you won't believe some of these stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.